So what does the future of the past look like? You may be thinking it looks like Jurassic Park or time machines, but I think it looks like all of you. The future of the past begins with youth. The adventure of being a youth scientist is very rewarding, but not without struggles. However, these rewards are definitely worth the struggles. When I was 7, I went into the dinosaur stage that all kids go through. However, I never left. I discovered my first fossil that same year. I found it at my cottage. I was skipping rocks, and as I picked one up, I noticed that it had an interesting pattern on it. And so instead of skipping it into the water right away, I decided to look closer at it. And the same moment that I noticed that it was actually a fossil, my sister accidentally threw a rock into my cousin's head, and so, well, all attention shifted to that. But as soon as I got home, I put it in my jewelry box, and this really fueled my passion for paleontology. So I didn't start geology science fair projects until grade 7. I was inspired by a 100-year flood in my community to find out how soil permeability, saturation point, and particle size affect basement flooding. And this project resulted in the creation of a map of my city outlining the places that were most likely to experience basement flooding based on soil types. And the most important part of this project was finding out that I definitely wanted to continue research in geoscience. So in grade 8, I read an article on fossils from the Green River Formation in Wyoming. This article explained how scientists still don't know how the animals died before becoming fossilized. And one of the theories was that there was a volcano that erupted, and the volcanic ash landed in a lake, which led to the fish dying and becoming fossilized. Through further research, I discovered that 2 of the common fossilized fish from the formation are Nichia alta and Nichia eocena. And when volcanic ash comes in contact with water, it produces hydrochloric acid. And I wanted to see what would happen if a fish body was left in the hydrochloric acid for a certain amount of time, and if the fish would be able to be fossilized in the fantastic way that the Green River fossils were. Additionally, I wanted to see what would happen to the fossils themselves if they were exposed to acidic solutions. So I went online and I ordered a bunch of fossils. As well, through research on the internet, I discovered that a direct descendant of the Nichia fish is sardines. What I didn't realize was how difficult it would be to find sardines in the middle of winter in northern Ontario, Canada. Sardines are a type of herring, and all of the stores that sell fish in my city only sold freshwater herring, which is not actually true herring. I spent weeks searching grocery stores for fresh or frozen sardines. There were none, so I improvised. I found sardine pieces in cans of water with no preservatives added and chose to use those. Now, for the next barrier, getting hydrochloric acid. I only needed to use a very diluted solution, but it proved to be quite difficult. I reached out to a university, but they told me that using their chemicals was not possible, and maybe I should try vinegar. I was frustrated, as using vinegar would defeat the purpose of the project. Volcanic ash doesn't create vinegar when it comes in contact with water. After contacting several more people, I discovered that you can buy a fairly high concentration hydrochloric acid at a smaller hardware chain store. Finally, my project was coming together. The only remaining issue was finding a well-ventilated area where I could use the hydrochloric acid safely. Through further research, I discovered where to purchase the appropriate safety equipment to complete the experiment in my backyard. In the end, I got some pretty interesting results. The hydrochloric acid completely destroyed the fish pieces after less than a week, suggesting that the fish could not have been fossilized by volcanic ash in water. The acid reacted with the limestone, which was expected, as it is basic. What was the most interesting was the fossilized fish actually came off of the limestone and became rehydrated. So that's that piece in the middle with all the circles on it. The bones had actually dissolved, but what was left of the fossil, in a perfect fist shape, though it was flat, was squishy and bendable. This was something I had never read about in my background research, and I had to reach out to a paleontologist to try and find some explanation. It turns out the best explanation was that there may have been preserved soft tissue that became hydrated in the acid. After I got my results, I reached out to the university once again. After hearing that I had significant discoveries, the anthropology department offered to let me use some of their microscopes to examine the results in more detail. Under the microscope, I could see impressions of what had become rehydrated, of where the bones had been. They invited me back to work on my project for the next year with lab access. So, that summer, I went to a presentation from one of the people who worked at the anthropology department. He showed me an artifact, this artifact here, and told me it was white taconite. And that archaeologists don't exactly know what white taconite is. Some thought it was a type of rock called jasper taconite that had been heated to high temperatures, and some thought it was a separate type of rock. This sparked my interest, and I started to do some background research. I found that from time and use, rocks can develop a change in sheen or color called a patina. These patinas can cause some rocks to look like other type of rocks. Patinas on stone tools can lead to the misidentification of the type of stone that the stone tools are made of. So, I decided to do my project on trying to figure out how specific patinas are formed and if it is possible to identify the type of rock that stone tools are made of based solely on its patina in a non-destructive way. I did this by artificially patinating different types of lithic material and analyzing the resulting patinas. So sodium bicarbonate and sodium hydroxide were used to simulate artifacts being placed in an alkaline environment, which can occur for a short time after forest fires. And nitric and hydrochloric acid were used to simulate artifacts being placed in acidic environments like boreal forest podzels. As well, samples were exposed to lipids to simulate artifacts being exposed to animal fats and tissues. Samples were also heat-treated in a muffle furnace to 300 and 500 degrees Celsius to simulate the stone tools being left in a man-made fire or a forest fire. The first time I attempted heat treatment on my samples, it was at 500 degrees Celsius, and there were not enough ceramic crucibles for all my samples, so some had to go in these crucibles made of some kind of plastic. When the temperature reached 500 degrees, I decided to go and check on my samples. There was a bit of an issue. The plastic crucibles only had a rating to 600 degrees Celsius, and some kind of previous testing done in them had compromised them, so they had actually begun melting inside of the furnace. My samples were encased in the melted plastic, which solidified when I took it out of the muffle furnace. Let's just say I had to do that test again. The experiment yielded interesting results. The white taconite that puzzled archaeologists was just jasper taconite ever being exposed to an acidic environment, not heat-treated or a separate type of rock like archaeologists had thought. So on that side, the far side, you can see the jasper taconite before being treated, and then you can see it after being treated. As well, there's a type of stone found in my area called Hudson Bay lowland chert, and when it is exposed to lipids, it looks almost identical to another type of stone called Onondaga chert, found approximately 1,400 kilometers away. This information was immediately applied to an artifact that my local university had in collection. This artifact looked like Onondaga chert, but was found in my community and was pot-lidded. The Hudson Bay lowland chert exposed to lipids provided a perfect explanation to this mystery. The project resulted in 4 significant discoveries. The white taconite was simply jasper taconite exposed to acid. Shiny patina found on many artifacts that origin was unknown is caused by lipids. Patinas can cause 2 types of stone that previously looked different to look identical. And it's only possible to identify source materials by distinct patinas, as patinas on materials differ with environments and can look the same as other materials and patinas. 2 summers ago, I went on a family trip to Alberta and went to a museum that I went to when I was 7. Before I got to the museum, I emailed them explaining that I was a youth researcher and asking if I could meet up with a paleontologist who works there to discuss research. They were very encouraging and set up a meeting time. I toured the museum right the night before so I'd have plenty of time to meet the person. It turned out to be amazing. When I went to the front desk, they gave me a visitor's pass because I would get to go behind the scenes. First, we sat down and talked about school, what kind of courses I should take in high school, what I should consider for choosing a university and program for becoming a paleontologist. Then I got to go behind the scenes, and it was amazing. I got to see how incredibly organized everything, down to fossilized teeth smaller than the size of the fingernail on your pinky finger. There was a specific room filled with fossils for scientific research. They're fossils that are common and with no great significance. And when I heard that, I knew that I wanted to be able to use fossils from that room for research someday. And what I didn't know was that was going to be sooner than I expected. The person who was giving me the tour was so kind and encouraging. As we were touring, he was telling me about various things in paleontology that remain unknown and saying that I could be the one to solve it. I got to go into a prep lab, an area that is visible from the glass window. And this has been an area that I had been curiously looking into, even when I was 7 years old. He explained what the technicians were working on, and I got to see and feel some very important fossil specimens. When I touch a fossil, I feel connected to it. It makes me want to know what caused this hole in the bone, what caused the bones to be dispersed like this, how did this animal die? When I feel a fossil and I look closely at it, I envision what it looked like before it died. It's almost magical. When I was in the prep lab with those specimens, I knew that being a paleontologist is what I was meant to do, and I would be back there someday with my own research. After spending a few days in town with the museum, I went to a provincial park that was filled with dinosaur fossils, and that's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. As we drove down into the Badlands, I had my parents play the Jurassic Park theme song, and it was perfect. We were really driving down into another time era. The next day was really special. It was the first time I would get to go on an actual dinosaur dig. I was ready. Though spending 8 hours in temperatures over 95 degrees Fahrenheit with no shade may seem horrendous to you, it was incredible for me. As soon as we got to the main site, I was eager to learn as much as I could. I started working and didn't stop until it was all over. Well, except for lunch. So, as part of this excavation, I got to visit a microsite, and when I was there, I happened to find a fossil crocodile tooth, and the guide decided to keep it as an example. And this was really important to me because that was the first time one of my fossils that I found was actually going to be used for something. So that's the dig site. So when I was at the dig, I was working on a type of rock that was really hard and puzzled scientists. And so that got me thinking. It was so hard that they couldn't remove dinosaur bones without causing damage and a lot of manual effort. So I started researching, and I wanted to see if I could find a geochemical treatment that would soften or remove the ironstone without damaging the fossil. As well, through research, I discovered that ironstone also poses a problem to boulder opal mining, and I wanted to see if I could apply similar methods to that. So I emailed the anthropology department and went to pitch the idea to them. They loved the idea, but they thought it would be hard to get fossils and opals. So I went online and I ordered opals from Australia. And then I emailed the people that took me on the tour at the museum, and they sent me a research loan of fossils and ironstone. This project was really my dream. But though it was my dream, there were still people who were pretty unsupportive. This was an issue that paleontologists hadn't figured out a solution to without some bad side effects, and here I was, a 10th grader, attempting to find the solution. I believed I could do it, but there were many who didn't. I clearly remember several people saying to me, if real scientists can't figure it out, then neither can you. This hurt. why couldn't my research be considered as good as real scientists? And what even qualifies as a real scientist? In my mind, I was a scientist because I was doing scientific research using the same methods as those with degrees behind their name. I set out to prove these people wrong and show them that age does not limit the quality of research. So in the end, I used several chemical treatments on the different fossils and different ironstones to see if I could break down this ironstone. And in the end, carbonic acid treatment worked the best for fossilized bone and soft tissues. It caused no significant damage, but significantly softened the ironstone. And hydrochloric acid was the best treatment for opal removal. And when you think about it, carbonic acid is a fascinating solution. It's literally soda water that you can buy from the grocery store, and my dad jokingly suggested that I should sell a brand of it called Fossil Fuel because of my results. Time has shown me that age doesn't limit the quality of your research. It's possible to be a youth researcher and solve issues that adults haven't been able to solve. The research that youth can do can have results that are valid and valuable. When adults tell you that you can't research something because they haven't been able to figure it out, don't take no for an answer. Sometimes crazy ideas are the best ones. So my friends always ask me, "You're good at science. Why do you want to enter a field like paleontology about the past that has no future?" Well, I always explain how fields like paleontology do have a future, and I believe it involves two critical things. The first thing I believe it involves is bringing other areas of science to paleontology. A lot of the new research coming out of the field of paleontology involves other fields. For example, there are paleontologists using computer programming to determine the bite strengths of dinosaurs, and like I did, paleontologists using chemistry to extract fossils from their matrix. This also applies to other fields about the past, like archaeology and evolutionary biology. The second thing that the future of the past involves is youth. Youth have incredibly innovative ideas and a lot of passion. Bringing this to these fields will help propel them forward. So, what is the future of the past? I'm looking at it right now. Youth bringing creative ideas to multiple areas of science to the science of the past. Thanks.